Stardate 11/12.2020. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a kind of smart, kind of funny podcast about new Star Trek and beyond. I'm your reluctant captain, Mike Moody Garcia. With me on the view screen, we have
Mariah Gossett.
And Grant.
Just Grant.
Just Grant. And Clyde is not with us tonight, but he'll be back hopefully next week. We miss you, Clyde. Tonight, we're streaming the pod live on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter to review and break down Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 5, Die Trying. Not a Liam Neeson movie, Die Trying, an episode of Star Trek. Before we do that, Mariah, can you let everyone know how to support this little podcast?
Yes. So there are a couple of ways you can help support the pod. One is by watching us live right now. That's great. You're already doing it if you're watching this right now. If not, and you're listening to the audio version, make sure you have subscribed to the podcast. Also, if you're watching us on video, we'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the audio version of the pod as well. We need those download numbers. It helps us out. So you can subscribe to the pod on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. To find the links to all of that and more, visit StarTrekPod.co. Grant, how else can people help us out?
Patreon.com/Star Trek Pod. We are building us a little bit of a Trekkie community. I'm sure there's a lot of Trekkie communities out there, but ours is probably the best.
I think so.
You guys should join it. Go to patreon.com/Star Trek Pod to make a per episode pledge. And if you give us $2 an episode, $8 a month, roughly, maybe 10 if it's a 5-weeker. I don't know. You can join us over at our exclusive Slack channel where we chat about all things Trek. We also put up exclusive little mini episodes here or there just for our Patreon subscribers. And we try and do little fun things all the time over there as well that we would love for you to be able to be a part of. So we appreciate all of your support. We try to make it worthwhile for you. And you are keeping the lights on for us over at patreon.com/Star Trek Pod. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Grant. And if you are watching us live, toss us some comments and questions in the live chat. Be sure to type capital pod, P-O-D, if you want us to maybe mention your comment or question on the pod a little later. All right. Let's beam onto the Voyager J and dive into Die Trying, Episode 5 of Season 3 of Disco. This episode was written by Sean Cochran, story by James Duff and Sean Cochran, and directed by Masha Vrilo, who also directed some episodes of Picard, one ep of Disco last season, and Runaway, the short trek with Poe and Tilly.
One of my faves.
Yeah, she's really good. All right. Die Trying. This is the one where we meet new Starfleet, NU Starfleet. And they're not great, but they're not bad. They're kind of like arrogant assholes you can easily win over with like a little elbow grease and a spore drive.
I think the spore drive helps. Yeah,
I think so. So, this is Star Trek Discovery Pod, so we don't give you hot takes. We give you hot freaks.
Hot freaks.
Hot freaks. Who's going first?
I can go.
You go.
All right. I'm doing it. So, I mean, be still, my little nerd heart, that opening sequence into all of the ships, including my beloved Voyager, even if it is the 11th generation of that ship, I got really excited about it. There was references to Nog. There were beautiful, like incredible special effects, and like the visual effects designers really outdid themselves on this one. From home, like, again, hats off. We've said it a few times. I thought they knocked this one out of the park. I like that we had a science puzzle. I like that we had a little bit of political drama. I'm very interested in this Cronenberg, what I'm assuming is the Section 31 backdoor pilot that we're about to get here. I really enjoyed this one. I can say there is a couple of cheesy ball moments, but I enjoyed them. The way that the crew was like nerding out over every ship, I feel like was the audience nerding out over every ship, and they were just being us for that moment. And I appreciate the wariness of new Trek. I am very worried about our little Adira and what happened to them. Where did they go? I didn't like that we didn't get to see them at the end of the episode. That made me very nervous.
Yeah, I was like, is no one asking about
Yeah, I
it?
was like, no one's gonna go and make sure. Like, Hugh, can you go follow up? Like, I need some more contact. And I'm very excited about this possible thread of a clue through the music. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'll go next, and I'm a little bit mixed on this episode. I thought it's very exciting getting to see this new realization of what this futuristic, small, isolated Starfleet, like hanging on by a thread, is, and this really cool future tech that they have, as well as this kind of lo-fi reach, I guess, that they have, and how they're kind of approaching everything with Discovery made sense to me to a certain extent, except for then they kind of backtrack and waffle and just give in to whatever. Like you said in the intro, Mike, there are some plot contrivances that happen in this which just feel a rushed end, means to an end.
But isn't that Star Trek in the end?
It's
Sometimes.
it's stuff that I don't like in Trek, I guess. So a little bit of a shrug there, but I was really impressed with how well-rounded this episode seemed in how it really gave so much great time and moments to all of the cast and crew. Pretty much, I think there's maybe like 3 of the extended cast that didn't really get a good moment. Everyone else did, and I was just feeling it. I was like, oh wow, this really spreads the love. It makes it feel like a team. It feels really cohesive, and it set up a couple interesting mysteries going forward, including the music one that I'm just like, oh yes, that's the stuff I love. So yeah, mixed feelings on it, but I'm digging it.
I'm gonna echo that. I had some mixed feelings too. I had a really long hot freak last week. I'm gonna try and do a short one this week. Yeah, I'm pretty
And
mixed
the
on this.
time starts.
Go.
Yeah.
I'm pretty mixed on it. This episode had a lot to do. It had to introduce us to the concept what Starfleet and the Federation is now, 1,000 years after the jump. That was a heavy load. It had to negotiate the relationship between Discovery showing up out of the blue and new Starfleet, and then they jammed in this weird side mission that ended up being the overall, thematic piece of the entire episode. And there was just a lot going on. And I thought this was kind of a mess. This episode was kind of a mess. However, there were some really great things in this episode. I loved all the effects. I loved seeing the new starbase, or the headquarters for Starfleet. That was beautiful. I loved all the little character moments and lots of great comedy beats. Opening up with Saru's captain's log, his first official captain's log, was great. So as a whole, it didn't hold up for me very well, and some of it felt very contrived. But there were pieces that I absolutely loved, and I like where we're going. There was just so much to fit in here. And about the halfway point, I was like, oh, they're adding more? There's another mission? Okay, why don't we just go hang with Adira for a while? Because everybody knows I love Adira. But peace, Nahn. Hope we see you soon. And I'm kind of mixed. That's my hot freak.
Yeah, the Nahn thing's interesting because I felt like they just announced her as like a series regular. So I'm wondering if she's going to sort of come back around at some point. So
she'll probably be back. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, let's
seemed like such a weirdly forced exit, didn't it?
But that's why I don't think it's an exit.
Yeah, but it was just like this. Oh, we don't have any time to puzzle piece this out, but if we're crashing into a planet, we have about 20 minutes to kind of negotiate and source ideas for something. But Nahn, it's like no other options. Bye. Go ahead and let's stay here in here with. And I didn't even get it. Is she
I
staying
didn't-
there
I
with a
didn't get
guy that's gonna die, and she's just gonna not help him medically, but just
Okay,
be
that-
there to watch the seeds?
Let's jump into that. I was gonna say, hey, let's try to go chronologically, but fuck that. Nahn. Okay. Great to see a focus on Nahn, right?
Mhm.
Even if this plot was that she was involved in was a little sloppy, seemed kind of crammed into this episode. But it kind of sucks because Nahn is now gone immediately after we get the most development for her character and her species and her culture. Like, here's everything about Nahn and her species. Here are the dramatic intricacies of how they live. And now she's out, like, immediately. But I read Nahn's whole journey here. It just felt like it was representing or trying to represent the larger theme of the episode, which was trying to find your home or trying to find a center or where you belong. Like, Disco wants to be home at New Starfleet, and they're not quite there yet. And we see Nahn, who we know is not quite at home on Disco, since she was an Enterprise crew member who just happened to stay on Disco last season. But now she may actually get to go back to her home planet with a member of her species, and these are things that were denied to her in her original era 1,000 years ago. So that's cool. The thematic stuff with her was great. But yeah, the entire plot, the resolution of that whole thing was kind of messy, goofy execution with the plot of what was going on this seed ship. Why did she have to stay? Like, I could figure it out, but the show made me do a lot of like mental gymnastics to, it just wasn't clear.
It also echoes the selfless, sacrifice for the good of Starfleet, what she's doing, right?
Yeah, which is why she stayed on Disco to honor Ariam's sacrifice.
I
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she was just like, this seems more exciting and I can't go back to my home world anyway. I mean, in the end, she's kind of gotten more of what she's wanted, right? Because in her original timeline, her species is not a member of the Federation. She's kind of this family disappointment because she joined. This is they typically like don't, what was the phraseology she used? It was something like, we're known for being like poor, and like there's all these things, sort of like identity kind of things wrapped up in that. But I think that moment of seeing people who are succeeding in a part of the Federation for her was probably that moment of like, oh, I could go home now and just be home and still be a part of the Federation. I did get confused. I was like, that ship doesn't seem that big. They couldn't just like shove it in the back of Discovery and take everybody back to the base.
They had a tractor beam on it.
Like, is that not an option? And like on the second, it was like on the first watch, my first watches, I try to just like feel all the feelings to get like my baseline of how I felt about the episode. And then my second watches, I'm looking out for these like details where it's just like, oh, I mean, yes, I could explain away why we're doing this. She's going to take this ship so that it's, a successful tour for her people that are in charge of the ship. She doesn't want this to be like a moment of downfall for them, sort of like a failure. Yeah. And like trying to make it better for them, like reputation wise, maybe. But yeah, again, it's like a lot of mental gymnastics to sort of get there. So I'm hoping it's like a planted seed of like something that's going to come later.
Yeah. She's taken the ship back to Barzan, I guess. Yeah. I in the moment I was like, why, what, where is she, what? But afterwards I had to think about it. I was like, okay, she's taken the ship back to, I think it's Barzan is her, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing.
But the dude's gonna die in a week if he doesn't get medical attention.
A fake world.
Well,
did they even say something about like cryo freezing him or something?
He wants to die.
Yeah, he wants to die and be with his family. Right. And so I think she's going to cryo freeze him, but she probably also needs him to live long enough to pass the voice command password on to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which also to me, I was like, there's no just override codes for this. This seems very precarious that only one, because what if he did die in that original storm?
A lot of holes. And the problem is that the holes, they deflate the emotional impact of the story.
Right. What was the part where Burnham says to Nahn, oh, if you stay here though, you'll lose your rank and everything with Starfleet. Or she said something to that
Give up
effect
your
of, like,
career.
you give up your. I'm like,
Yeah.
how? Isn't it?
How is she
Well,
giving up her career by
she's-
piloting a starship?
Yeah, can't
I
she just
Starfleet
like
starship.
do this
Yeah.
as part of Starfleet?
But I think she's a pretty high-ranking security officer, and she's essentially going to become like a seed watcher. She's security for
La-
the seeds.
lateral move.
I
Lateral
know.
move.
It just seemed like an unnecessary kind of thing to say to her. Like, she understands she's going to be stepping away from her position on the ship. That's kind of an obvious with what she's doing. You don't have to be like,
Right.
well, we're going to have to kick you out of Starfleet then and just tear her patch off or whatever. I was like, what is that?
I will say the other moment I really loved about Nahn, and this goes into probably one of my favorite little like subsequent little moments in this episode, is when she's being questioned by the android hologram things, and she just keeps saying her rank and file over and over again, which was
mhm.
very funny to me.
Everyone in
then-
that sequence.
Oh my god, so many gems. Like Hugh's like, I'm good with my murderer now, killed me. And then
So good.
Wait,
The
who murdered him?
Ash Tyler.
Ash Tyler. They made up at the end.
Right? It's Ash Tyler.
Yeah,
I forgot.
The debrief sequences were so great, and they made such great use of the more comic characters like Stamets, Reno, Tilly. Reno's just like snacking on blue chips, ordering drinks the whole time.
Can you give me something to drink? I'm a little parched.
Yeah.
And then
I feel
Tilly's
that.
like, oh, is that a tiny pie? I'd be very jealous if it's a tiny pie.
It's a cupcake I made.
Oh, okay. Also jealous. But anyway, sorry, very distracted by sugar. That is my kryptonite.
Let's back up. Let's back up a little bit to the beginning of the episode. I really like the moment where Saru called Michael his number one. And if you're not a Star Trek fan from way back, Grant Davis, you probably thought that was a little cheesy when he looks at Michael and makes a to-do about calling her number one, but I thought it was really sweet.
Hadn't she been number one a couple different times though?
She was for original timeline Georgiou.
But not for Saru.
Right.
Were you guys anticipating the new Federation Starfleet would be like evil, like when we got to Earth a few episodes ago, or worse than Earth? Or did you have like higher hopes for what it would look like? Or was what we got here kind of what you expected?
I mean, it's sort of what I expected. Is like, I don't think we've gotten the full picture of what the Federation is now. I'm also very interested to see what the differences are going to be between the Federation and Starfleet, because right now we've only seen an admiral in Starfleet. We don't really know what the citizen government of the Federation looks like yet. So I'll be interested to see what that is like at this point, because that is more of like where you saw the diplomats and like a lot of. I thought it was mostly weird that besides the refugees that they were trying to help, everyone appeared to be, there's a lot of humans, right? There was the one guy.
There were a lot of bumpy forehead people.
There was some
running
bumpy
around.
forehead people, but
Mhm.
I don't.
There was a Kazon.
Oh, a Kazon. Okay, I guess there is more. It just seemed very like the rank and file are very human centric still, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think the Admiral Vance, had a throwaway line where he said the Federation and Starfleet headquarters exist on this starbase, and we're kind of one and the same. I think they're just, for the ease of story, they're just trying to fold it into one thing, Federation and Starfleet, it seemed like. So I don't know if there's much of a delineation between the two anymore.
I was liking the approach to them. It wasn't what I expected, but that's more because of what we had been discussing and how you guys were theorizing that this might be all on Vulcan, or it might be all the Klingon planet Kronos. Is that right? And so to see that it's its own kind of isolated force field, self-powered hub that's just kind of floating around in space, I thought it was a really cool idea. And that the Starfleet we're exposed to isn't necessarily, it's of course not as powerful as what it was, right? But it also seems to be, there was something that seemed a little nefarious about it at first, and it kind of waffles back and forth. I'm like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel about them, which seems intentional. We're new like the rest of the crew. They're bringing them in, they're beaming them in themselves. They're not really communicating up front. When Burnham and Saru and Adira all are beamed aboard, no one's there to greet them at first, which seems weird as well. They're just kind of dismissed despite knowing like, hey, the Admiral is on this ship in a different body. And like, that seems like there should be more pomp and circumstance to this. So it all felt a little bit uncomfortable, which I think works because we're seeing cracks in the system of what Starfleet should be. It's not quite there, and it needs help. It needs something to clean it up, but it is still a shadow, at least, if not a facsimile of what it should be. It's aiming to be that, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
and
evil. It's not just straight
No.
evil.
Yeah.
Right.
And at the end, we get a kind of heavy-handed metaphor about the Renaissance painter that Saru,
Kind of.
that Saru relates to Discovery, that we're here to lead you into the Renaissance.
Did y'all like Vance?
Yeah, I appreciated Vance's
That's
shrewdness.
a brusque, yeah, dude. Right?
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed his conflict with Burnham. We the viewer, we know Burnham, we know Disco, we know that they're truly representative of Starfleet at its best, but Vance doesn't know that, right? So
I love
did-
his line to Adira, like, I'm not familiar with you.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, it's a good
That-
point.
that line summed up who he was in this episode. Like he did come off as arrogant and very distant, but that, like you were saying, Grant, that's to be expected because here comes Discovery from 1,000 years in the past. No one knows who it is. It's like, hey, we're a ship that you've never heard of that is part of Starfleet that rides on mushroom space. We want to hang. They're like, who are you?
Who are these hippies
What
who
is this?
too much acid
Yeah.
out in space?
Slow your roll. We had a burn. We lost all sorts of people. We should be a little bit suspect and defensive here. Like, they're on firm ground to slow down Discovery and not give an ounce to Michael Burnham's whims of like, oh, I want to go save the day and go raid a seed ship. I'd be like, hold up, time travelers. I hate the line where a character says, look, it's one of two things. Either this works out great for you, or there's nothing lost by you giving us information on where this ship is. I'm like, yes, there's something lost. We don't know your intentions. If you were bad time traveler people, we don't want to give you the information where the seed ship is. That is quite a bit of trust they were giving for them
Right.
still trying to play catch up on a ton of information that was being dropped on them.
Yeah, which I think, I think Burnham at this point has a little bit of trouble seeing like the forest through the trees, if you will. She's just like, we're Federation, you're Federation. Why aren't we all just getting along and moving forward with this? Like, why aren't you trusting me? Everyone back. I earned all of the trust back in my timeline.
Right.
I think because
And they have a good
worked-
point there.
Right. Like she's worked so hard to get to that point to earn the respect of her peers, but now it's like all new peers. And I think Saru was very smart in the way that he was like, I understand completely where the Admiral is coming from. I would be this questionable as well. So I'm going to stay here as a sign of like, they wouldn't abandon their captain if they really were temporal, like bandits or whatever they think they are. And then some security officers will go with the ship. I have to say but I did love seeing Michael Burnham in charge of that ship for this mission. She was such a badass when she's just like, black alert, let's show them what we're made of. You might want to hold on to something. And I was like, ooh, I can feel how you want to prove yourself so bad in this moment. And I love it.
Yeah, she was not fucking around on there. It was
Nope.
awesome.
And the whole crew. The whole bridge crew is just like,
I know they're all
we're
like,
gonna be on it. We're gonna be so snappy and
snickering to
official.
themselves.
They're like, we're applying for this job, we're getting this job, let's flex in front of the new Starfleet observer, whatever her name was. I also like that we did get to see the bridge crew and the mycelial network trio of Stamets, Reno, and Tilly.
So funny.
So good.
In their functional But this episode really gave us more of the bridge crew working together in a really satisfying way. And we also saw some continuation of the crew's trauma, especially with Detmer dealing with her PTSD still in this episode, where she's like hesitating here and there, trying to pull that seed ship out of the ion storm or whatever that was. I like that the show is recognizing that trauma or PTSD doesn't just go away in one episode. And they're kind of using that to show us how the bridge crew, who we really don't know very well, like now we're seeing who they are and how they support each other. Like Owo helping Detmer get through her hesitation. Like we have a reason to care about them now and to see how they work with each other emotionally. It just makes getting to know these smaller characters feel deeper and more just deeper.
Yeah, I really like how much more we're getting to see of the bridge crew and everyone getting like their moments of personality. And, you know, I'm excited to see it sort of play out more consistently with other Star Trek shows where we really get to know each of those bridge crew members and sort of the different pieces of the puzzle that they provide. Because it has been a little engineering heavy in it, always being like the Stamets, Tilly, Reno kind of quadrant. Also, I love that we get more Hugh lately. We've gotten a ton of Culber, and I am here for more Wilson Cruz in my life.
He brings such a warmth and a sense of safety, but he's also really funny.
Yes, and
So
he and they're so quippy, you know, it's like very off kilter, or not off kilter, but just like an aside, and then you're just like, damn, that was really fucking funny.
Well, the fact that we've been desperate for an empath on the show, someone who can just recognize in other people pain points and just be sympathetic and look at people as people instead of vehicles for achieving end goals, right? Like that's what Hugh brings to the show and is such a good balance and such a great element story-wise for being able to flesh out character development without it feeling, you know, heavy-handed with just some back and forth dialogue that feels forced.
Yeah,
he is a character who would be looking for those entry points and asking people those questions because he's concerned about the well-being of everyone on the ship, and how he's moved from just being a medical doctor to also like a psychological like therapist for everyone is such a good call, I think.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying his character development. And I like to, like, kind of on the flip side for Stamets, we're getting to see him maintain that like low level pettiness. Like when he's like, have you been talking to Ditmer about me? Like, why is everyone asking me this question?
We hugged, but I didn't fully mean it because I'm still a little bit bitter about Ditmer.
I want to ask you guys and maybe the chat about this temporal war reference that we got from the Admiral. Like the time travel ban puts Disco in a slippery situation. Their whole existence is a crime because nobody's supposed to be time traveling. I didn't watch a lot of Enterprise. I know the temporal Cold War with aliens traveling through time and fucking shit up was a big part of that show. But I do like that.
I think there was a book as well.
Was there a book?
I think so.
So are they still fighting that war? Is that why they were so running around everywhere, and are they just kind of devastated by it?
It feels like the way I am interpreting the timeline, and I could be wrong, is that there was like a new temporal war at some point in the early 30th century, I guess is what he said, and which came to an end with them just completely outlawing time travel.
Okay.
Which is very interesting when then you think about the conversation between Cronenberg and Georgiou, because he's talking about how essentially which there's some really fun like science nerd references in this episode, like from like the seed bank, which actually exists on Earth. It's in Antarctica. It's very cool. To like the fact that the universe is constantly expanding. And so the concept that the distance between these mirror verses would also be expanding. And now we can't like, there's no crossovers happening. Yeah. So I forgot where I was going with this, but the temporal wars, right? So I think the concept of like traveling between universes and time is now a crime.
And I like that it made disco criminals, or it gave the disco crew its motivation to try to prove themselves in this episode, and then we get off to the seed plot. So that worked story wise for me. I was just I want to know, my world building brain, who loves world building, wants to know all about this war and what happened, even though I know the show is just using it to put Disco in a difficult situation. Like, you're not
Well,
supposed to be here, and you're really not supposed to be here because it's against a lot of time travel.
I'm wondering though if they're setting this up to be a possible like explanation for both the reason that everyone knows this one particular song, and then the reason that we haven't seen anyone from the Tyrion, right? The Tyrion Terran universe. Also, I've seen it on, I think, our Slack and a few other places. But do you think Cronenberg is from the Terran Empire?
Oh, well, let's just talk about David Cronenberg for a minute. David Cronenberg, the director of The Fly, Scanners, Dead Ringers, Crash, The Good One, was in this episode.
Yes. So I have to tell you, when I saw he was going to be in this episode, I was a little worried that it was going to get very horror gore. Like, he is the king of body horror specifically.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just like, ooh, where are we going with this if he is in this episode? Like, is this about to get real gross? Like,
I think it was such a smart idea to cast Cronenberg, who is just this like living, breathing, aloof vibe of a person, like, to play opposite Georgiou, because he's so
also a vibe.
He's also a vibe because he's just so collected, and we saw how cleverly she dispatched the weird AI interrogators or whatever they were, but Cronenberg, who I'm assuming is actually Section 31.
Right, me too.
I feel like everyone is calling him Glasses or Mr. Glasses.
Mr. Glasses,
by the way.
It's a good shorthand. They didn't give him a character name yet, so we don't know.
Well, I'm assuming he's Section 31, and he doesn't fall for her shit because he's a student of Terran culture. He just sits back and watches the show, and like, he's coolly analyzing her, and later he pulls on her insecurities about the fall of the Empire and all that.
He
and
immediately identifies that Burnham or someone on the ship.
Right.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of subtext in this scene about what may have caused the burn. Maybe the Terrans were involved. It's really was a cool, unexpected vibe in this scene, and a good mystery plotting with two interesting characters. It felt like who's the filmmaker that they had on The Mandalorian last season? Werner Herzog.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah, it's like this, like Star Trek's version of that. It's kind of cool.
Right.
Yeah, I also had the thought. So at one point, they've dropped a couple of little hints, I think, as to what has happened to Georgiou, because obviously something has happened to her beyond her just having, I think, this revelation that she's the last of her kind in this particular timeline, possibly. But at one point, they make an aside about how one of the like stem cells of a Terran is like is in particular is what makes them so like violent and okay with violence.
Right.
And so I'm like, did they inject her with something to get rid of that?
Right. She has that catatonic moment where she's just staring at a wall for a second while Burnham's trying to talk to her.
Either.
Right. And Burnham's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "What are you talking about? Yeah, I'm fine."
Like
or she's been like fully body snatched, and that is not her.
I doubt that, but it might be this kind of soma-esque drug, right? This kind of some kind of sort of tranquilizer thing that they're like, we assessed everyone. You are straight up a threat. We're just going to dose you.
Yeah, it feels like that it feels like they're writing a shortcut to make her less threatening and less of an evil character, like Spike on Buffy, like a number of characters. The one zombie guy on iZombie, the great villain who's so much fun to have loses their memory and becomes a good guy. But I do think Disco will do something deeper with it. I think they did dose her, and they're trying to subdue her evil instincts.
Well, I think, Mariah's point that this might be a backdoor method of entering a Section 31 show is so much more fascinating to me immediately. than her and Ash Tyler and the dude who became Control, the one that they're trying to
Wayland.
softball in season 2. Like this future tech, like, hey, we're gonna mimic that ship and we're gonna have you guys be the time bandits that like go jump through time to fix stuff quantum leap style, Section 31, ruthlessly, and have her run the shop with that. Grab Nahn off the Sheed ship. She's back. Done.
It would be great. I'd be into it. Yeah, the other, so I am very concerned about Adira. I don't like that we did not see her at the end.
It felt intentionally
Right?
nefarious, right? Like, we have this guy who's now the Admiral, Vance, and there's immediately this sort of tension between Adira, who's no longer really Senatol, but she has Senatol memories within her that she can not fully access. And I think there's a little bit of like a power play there that is one element that you have to consider. And, oh, I don't really want you here. You're a threat to my authority and how I can run stuff. And we don't really know each other the way I knew Senatol.
Right. And I think Senatol was an admiral as well. So there could be, maybe there's something interesting now that Adira knows that this admiral doesn't want everyone else to know. I'm hoping we get some answers in the next episode, but yeah, I'm just like it left a big, when it's like what is it, Chekhov's gun, like this was like the reverse. I was like, we saw her in the beginning and now I want to see them again before we leave. Like, what happened?
I was so mad at the end of the episode that we don't get a resolution there, to the point where like, oh, I really have that character in my mind at the forefront, because Adira is what, 16, 17
In the show,
really
yeah.
young, and being taken off to run scientific tests on a kid seems
very
fucked up.
Foreboding. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that Saru and Burnham just kind of shrugging like, we put full trust in this Federation that everything's going to be A-okay there. I'm like, guys, don't. Like, that could be the other entry point too. There's something not right afoot with what this new Federation is.
I think it's going to lead up to absolutely nothing. Oh, they scanned me. I'm good. It didn't really seem like she was suppressing any more of the memories of
Do you think
Senatol.
maybe they just didn't have anything else for the character here?
Yeah.
Possible,
this episode was so stuffed. And I think what they want to do with Adira is when she's in an episode, she's in an episode. I think the writers, and I'm using she pronouns because the character in the show, she's she right now. I'll just go ahead and use they. So when the character uses it, when the writers use Adira in an episode, we've seen that they really want to focus on Adira and their story and their development. And there wasn't really room for that in this. So I think it was just kind of a shorthand of like, let's write them out for a minute.
Yeah. Do you all have any theories about the lullaby?
I think that is so fascinating. There's this shared memory across the universe of music. And part of me thinks that there's a message within it that no one has figured out and been able to decode, but it's being sent by someone who communicates through music and is sending out on some subliminal wavelength to everyone. So everyone just kind of has this ingrained in their society, like this song.
Yeah.
But why can't we figure it out?
Yeah. I wish, I'm trying to remember, did Nahn recognize the lullaby? Because I'm trying to figure out if it is a piece of, okay. Because then I was like, if it's a piece of music that our crew recognizes, then it is much older. But if it's something that only all these people recognize, and it's obviously something
it was
that's
their
happened
security
in the future.
officer in the future that recognized it. Yeah.
Burnham only knows about it because Adira was playing it in the previous episode. But yeah, that's odd. Adira played it on the cello in the last episode. Others in New Starfleet seem to recognize it, despite the fact that they couldn't, because communication between universes is so scattered. It probably has something to do with Michael's mom.
Oh,
really?
That seed was dropped in this episode.
It's true. But she
where
wants to find her mom.
she, and this episode was all about finding your home. Burnham never really had her home with her mom in a secure way, or at least it didn't last long. And she talked about that with Saru in a very, very personal moment in this episode. So I think there's something deeper going on there.
And if I'm remembering correctly, Michael's mom obviously jumped back through time wearing the original Red Angel suit, right? Or no? No? How did
I don't remember what happened to her. I know she used a suit, but I don't know where she went.
to get back to her original time, to this timeline, if I'm remembering correct. Chat, correct me if I am wrong. I've started rewatching season 2 before this one, and then I stopped when this one started because I was just excited. But I'll revisit it and double check for next week. But yeah, it would be interesting, because what if Burnham's mom has also been hopping around through time trying to figure out what the burn is or something at this point? Because who knows how long it was between her coming back and Discovery and Burnham jumping through, because we obviously saw there was a year gap between Burnham and Discovery. So what if there was another gap at the top of that timeline?
Yeah, what if the opening of the wormhole, the impetus before they were able to travel through, was 100 years chronologically previous and was the actual thing that caused the burn? Them opening the gap to jump through time, which is part of why time travel is not okay. And they are going to find out they caused a
I really don't want them to be the cause of the burn.
Right? I mean, that would be something heavy.
I would really hate if they were the cause of the burn.
They save the entire universe, but there's a cost.
I like every episode, Michael Burnham's like, if we weren't here, this would all be dead. Okay? All gone. We saved it all.
Another lingering thread that this show has presented to us while we're just in deep fringe theory territory is mycelial network and the Josep. And we saw when Hugh was trapped in there that he was a poison to the mycelial network. And they were like, we have a very controlled world here. And when you've jumped in and interrupted it, we can't heal ourselves and we're dying. So they pulled him out, and Stamets was able to continue jumping around. But if the Discovery ship jumps ahead into the future, and that technology is a known thing to have worked, but they are looking to replicate it, what if in the future, few hundred years, they're still working to try and replicate the mycelial network jumping spore drive ship? They can't fully do it, and they're getting dangerously close to destroying the mycelial network, similar to how I'm sorry, I'm going way off the deep end here, aren't I?
I was like, I'm having a little trouble following you, but I'm trying. Okay.
So what if after Discovery jumps ahead, the rest of Starfleet or someone else is trying to replicate the spore drive? They mess with the mycelial network, and the mycelial network fights back in a way that it knows how, by making all of the dilithium explode across the galaxy. Because mycelial network is a network that exists simultaneously across the galaxy and can affect it simultaneously. And what else can do that? What else could make all ships at the exact same time explode and all this dilithium mess up?
Interesting.
A potential idea.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And then maybe they sent out an apology in the form of music of like, hey, didn't mean to do that. Here's a musical song. Hope that everything's forgiven.
So wait, are you saying Discovery did this through the mycelial network, or another ship did this through the mycelial network?
No,
the mycelial network itself.
Oh,
the mycelial network itself
of the mushroom
caused the burn because Starfleet or someone else was messing with it. That's all I'm thinking.
That would be, but would that be I like where you're going, but would that be a compelling story? Do we really want to go back to the entities in the mycelial network trying to act like weird, awkward baby humans, and like that one character did, and us dealing with them again? I don't know.
I mean, I think it's at the crux of the story, the spore drive.
It could be interesting. I'm like half in on this theory with you, Grant. But what if instead of it being the mycelial network, what if it is one of the big bads that we haven't identified yet that has also discovered the mycelial network and then used it for bad, right? Like, because I think there is always that sort of theme throughout Star Trek, and I mean anything, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Thank you, Spider-Man. But the idea that if everyone has access to something that's this big and this powerful, that is unregulated and unknown by people, then what happens when someone with bad intentions has access to it? That could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm calling out the chat. I need your theories on the burn and your theories on the song.
Yes, please. And I'm gonna CJ, the song that never ends and it goes on and on, my friends, will now be stuck in my head for the rest of the night. Thank you so much.
The collective memory song reminded me of a plot point in Battlestar Galactica where some characters start listening, spoiler for Battlestar Galactica, start hearing all along the watchtower, and no one knows what it is, but people, it brings people together, and all of a sudden there's a revelation about everyone who knows that song. So it's a big deal.
True.
Yeah.
I had a question for Mike about the relationship between Saru and Michael and how you're feeling about this captain and number one dynamic. To me, it feels very early Janeway and Chakotay, in which they're just yelling at each other a lot, but we'll eventually figure it out.
I like it. I mean, we had Saru. Well, I don't know. These guys have been friends for a while, right? They've known each other for a while. And I really like their conflict in this. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat real quick. Okay. I thought Burnham and Saru's conflict was really well played and measured in this episode. Like she wants to like run and gun and sidestep the chain of command. And he reminds her that that's not how Starfleet works. That's not how the Disco crew works. And I really like this new Captain Number One dynamic because we can have these scenes of private mini conflicts between Saru and Burnham because they have their different leadership styles. But like in true Star Trek fashion, they come to an understanding. They debate and they figure it out. And they always have each other's backs. They have the same goal. And they make each other better. And they come up with a plan that works with their conflict and debate. I think it's really good stuff.
Yeah. I love that we don't see Saru contradict or talk down to the ideas that Burnham presents, even when Burnham probably is not following chain of command and is just like saying to the Admiral, hey, we're going to come step up and here's what we're going to do. Give us this information right now. Give me. And it's like, hold up. We don't even know where you guys came from out of time or whatever. Saru has her back there. And then later is like, hey, look, you have your approach. I have mine, but like, maybe let's just chill around these people who don't know who we are yet. And I was like, that's good, effective, like respect and leadership between them, because ultimately Burnham's a little bit more reckless style is extremely effective, right? Saru's timid, but at the same time, they need to balance each other out. It's a good pairing. I think the dynamic is fantastic right now.
Although I wouldn't characterize Saru as timid, I would characterize him as measured. Like he does do some risky and dangerous things for his crew and to keep everyone safe and do the right thing. So he's definitely not timid, but he is measured.
Like Gangly is gone, baby.
You're exactly. Yeah, he's not going to sidestep protocol, but if
ready to go.
But yeah, he's ready to go. He's definitely not timid. Yeah,
can we talk
I'm really
about
enjoying that dynamic.
Can we talk about the ships? I thought you guys were going to talk about this right at the top.
I know we kind of jumped in, but yeah, there's some fun references as we're coming in. I mean, I literally started like jumping up and down in my seat when the Voyager came across the screen. I got very, very excited.
I didn't know what to make of that. Explain the significance of what's going on.
It's just the 11th Voyager ship.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is like
generation ship like you were talking about?
No, so it just so you know how we've had multiple Enterprises?
Yeah,
it's
'cause they keep
They
getting
Enterprise
blew up or
destroyed.
whatever. Mhm.
dash.
Yeah.
There's Enterprise A, Enterprise B, Enterprise C, and so that's just like each time they rebuild the ship and they just give it the same name, but it's upgraded. So this would be the 11th like rebuild of Voyager, but it's kind of funny because none of these characters actually know Voyager at all because it didn't exist in their timeline. So they were just really excited to see what kind of a ship it was. And then we got the Constitution, which is the same class ship as Enterprise. I was really thinking we were going to see an Enterprise, but I guess they didn't want to take any attention away from Discovery at this point.
Right.
But perhaps we'll encounter our in the future Enterprise at some point. And then there's the USS Nog. Did you catch that one, Mike?
Of course I did. It's a DS9 reference,
Mhm.
and I actually had to go back and see it because someone mentioned it in our Slack. And I was like, "Oh wow!" So I went back to that shipyard scene, and there it was, the USS Nog, and there is a memory alpha entry for it now. It's an
Of course there is.
Eisenberg. It's an Eisenberg class ship, which is a
Aw.
tribute to Aaron Eisenberg
Mhm.
from DS9, who played the Ferengi Nog, who passed away last year. So that was a really nice tribute, and in canon because Nog is a great character in DS9 who had a really profound character arc from where he started to where we saw him end, and I can believe that this is the type of character would have a starship in Starfleet named after him. So that was great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed all of the fun references. And then there was also, if you noticed, thank you, Den of Geek, for the listicles of all of the references. I appreciate it every week because it adds to things, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. The new Starfleet uniforms are the same color coded system as TNG era. So the red is
Mhm.
for command.
Mhm.
So I thought that was also kind of cool. And then I loved the moment for Saru as well, where he gets to find out that Kaminar joined the Federation. I could see like what a beautiful
Yeah.
moment for Doug Jones to really. I'm always so impressed with how much emotion he can portray through that makeup. It is wildly impressive every single time.
It's like he knows how to make his eyes water just enough to be like,
Mhm.
pride.
I'm
Loved it.
emotional. But yeah, I thought that was really great.
What
So-
does the organic ship look like? That's where I want to see David
Right.
Cronenberg shine.
Oh,
Have
no,
your
that-
skin ship that's all bubbly and movie with skin or some shit.
So that's there's been organic ships before in Trek, specifically in Voyager. There is a species 85 died, blah blah blah, lots of numbers. It's the
That's
only
right.
one that
But
the
it wasn't a Starfleet ship. Yeah.
No, but it was an organic ship. So I would imagine
People
at this
just flying
point
around in the space whales.
this technology had kind of made its way through. But I think that's kind of it's cool and interesting. So I want to see all the new tech get integrated into Discovery, at least a little bit. I don't want Discovery to change a lot, but I'm hoping we get some like really nifty upgrades. The other big
like the new holographic space helmets they had in this episode.
Yeah, there was a couple of cool things like that. Also, we finally get confirmation of how many member states there are again, or there are now. So there's 38, down from 350 at its peak. I don't think we've ever gotten like a solid number before. And then
That
the
is
other,
decimated. That's
Yeah.
like literally decimated, right?
not good. And then the
Down to
other
110.
sort of interesting, and if people want to start putting in their like comments and questions for us while I run down Mariah's tangent of references that were in this episode.
Yes.
Admiral Vanson, a couple of times they talk about the Emerald Chain, which is apparently the alliance between the Andorians and the Orions, and I think that's very funny that they've called it the Emerald Chain because it's just blue and green combined. But they are in the Sigma Draconius system, which the last time we got like an episode taking place in that system was the original series, and it's the Spock's brain episode. So let's hope a Spock brain has not been stolen again.
All right, if you're watching us live, go ahead and drop in some comments for us in the chat. I like this comment from Carolyn K3, who says Saru is definitely giving Picard vibes, and Michael is now Riker, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, it is very much that I think a typical Captain Number One relationship in a lot of ways. I can see it as Picard and Riker, but also like Janeway and Chakotay. I think also have those moments of you get to see where each one of them shines and what makes them a good team.
Kern says, I don't think Starfleet is evil. They're still trying to help people within their limited resources. It actually felt like a realistic portrayal of what they've been forced into to survive now. I think that's
Mhm.
really true. I agree with that too.
I think that's a fair assessment. And we, of course, are going to be coming into this episode with our biases of our alliance to the disco crew, right? And so, from our outsider perspective, kind of like theirs, we're going to have our hackles up whenever anything's happening to them and be like, no, you can't do that.
Cassie S has a question for us. What technology would you like to see incorporated on Discovery during its retrofit, if it has one, and what would you like to see remain?
Keep
Grant,
the
what do you
spore
think?
drive. Keep the spore drive and skin suit, organic skin suit. I'm all about this now.
I'm hoping we get something cooler for Stamets to drive with the Spore Drive. And I think we've seen a preview of that as a possibility in some of the trailers for this season. So I think that's, yeah, I love the individual transporters. So I'm hoping everyone gets outfitted with those. And then I also like the comm badges that are like the projecty computers. I think that's also a fun piece of tech. And then who knows if we get to see Kayla, Ditmar, get a brand new way to fly the ship, a la like book ship, and see what that might be like. But I'd imagine that would be quite a learning curve. So, but that could be like maybe the moment that maybe inevitably breaks her at some point. She has to learn this brand new technology, and it's like very intense. But who knows?
I would say definitely keep the Spore Drive, upgrade the Spore Drive. I think we're going to see that. I don't want another ship to have the Spore Drive, though. I want Disco to be the only ship with the Spore Drive.
They have to.
In terms of updates, I like this idea of organic things being worked into the show and the ship now. So I just keep thinking about that really nice wood corner in Book's ship. Give me some more like natural, natural fibers and stuff. Give me some wood on the Disco.
I think we'll see it. I was going to say, I think we'll see it.
Give me wood, Disco.
It's a room, ready room, because he's obviously super into plants. So
true, very true. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up a part of the show where I don't remember the guy. Is Nahn Bajoran? Bazran? I don't remember what it was. Bazarin. The guy wanted to stay with his family. He wanted to die with them. They touched on protocol of Starfleet to leave no man behind, and the conflict between that and the cultural sensitivity. And I thought it was kind of this interesting point, and it didn't go too far into it, but it was this little sense of conflict that I was like, oh, I want to kind of explore a little bit more of being sensitive to that culture. And then they took all of what exists of that culture and sent it away on a sea chip. We never see it again.
Yeah.
Which felt weird to me.
It was such an odd resolution. It was set up as this great ethical conundrum between, do we honor this guy's culture and let him stay on the ship and grieve for his dead family until he dies, or do we violate his will and take him and the ship with us to preserve this vital knowledge and history that's on the ship? And they resolved this by, again, Nahn choosing to stay with the ship, which, okay, I guess that makes sense, but her staying and how that worked wasn't super clear as to how that would solve everything. Yeah, it was an odd resolution. I did like that they tried to go there with this ethical conflict, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see more of the Barzans. I think it's an interesting culture I'd like to at least see some more of, especially now that they're one of the only few members of the Federation we have left.
Cassius agrees. Like, why was it significant for him to die with his family? And why, after they had already died, did he preserve them? And I mean, I guess you don't want them rotting. Not to be too, dark
Well,
about
I think
this.
it was also a point to their cultural importance of probably some sort of burial rituals or something like that.
Right.
Would be my guess for things like that. What I was just going to ask
Just one of
y'all.
those interesting threads. I'm like, oh, I want more. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it. They're going to resolve the rest of this episode pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
There was a couple of things like, I'd mentioned like these new mysteries that popped up and just kind of run through them. We now have, in addition to like, what is the burn and what is the relationship between Linus and Georgiou, and is Grudge actually the secret queen of the
Ooh,
galaxy?
I want her to be.
We now have, what is this music that everyone is now
What if the
attuned to?
cat plays the piano?
Right. Why is Georgiou suddenly kind of drifting into catatonic states?
Who is David Cronenberg?
Who's Mr. Glasses?
Mr.
And
Glasses.
where the fuck is Adira? Those are my lingering questions at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I think we'll get to see, did y'all, and spoiler alerts, if anyone didn't get to see the preview for next week, you can fast forward whatever 30 seconds, but or not mute me or something. But they're kind of giving out tasks to people. It's all of these captains around and the admiral sort of divvying up things to do. And he has to reveal to all of these captains that there's now a ship that can travel with a spore drive. And of course, Saru is like, we could do it. We could do it. And they're like, no, you're like very important. We need you for like emergency things only at this point. But I'm wondering how all of these captains are going to react to this brand new ship with these brand new people they don't know kind of swooping in to become these hero type figures for them. And then also, how jealous are all these captains going to get that they don't have this spore drive?
In the future, there is no ego, Mariah. I
That's
think
not
they're all
true
going to
because
be
we have
so chill about this.
The burn changed all that, Grant.
Yeah, you're right. Like, is everyone gonna be super jealous and like toxic about this? And this is kind of like a throwback to the first season, right? When it was so crucial to preserve the Discovery ship because of its unique ability to jump anywhere. They're like, we don't want you as part of the battle. Was that first or second season? I think it was the first. Yeah, like, we don't want you as part of this battle. Take a step back because we need to handle this war and you need to just jump in when we need you. They're like, no, we can do a lot more.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the Disco now taking their cues from the Admiral? They agreed at the end of this episode that we're here to serve you. We're here to serve Starfleet and the Discovery, and he's basically going to be sending them out on missions.
Mixed.
Is that?
I anticipate a power play at some point, but I'm not sure. Does Star Trek go into politics and power play a la Game of Thrones kind of style of like people
Deep Space
wanting
Nine
leadership?
Did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine definitely does. And then, with the very beginnings of Voyager as well, when they bring on Chakotay's team, who were originally from sort of a fringe group who is at battles and odds with the Federation.
The Maquis.
The Maquis.
He was the Maori dude, right?
I
don't know who Chakotay is.
Chakotay is the guy with the like face tattoo.
Okay.
But anyway,
he's not from Earth?
number one.
He was not from I don't remember.
I thought it was just like I was assuming.
Anyway.
Okay.
How does a guy on a Star Trek podcast not know who Chakotay is?
Do we get that question yet?
It's going to happen.
It'll happen. There'll be a comment, and then I'm going to be super embarrassed because now I can't remember because it's been a hot minute since I've dug into the origins of Chakotay. I don't think he was.
He's a human.
Anyway. Yeah, I know he's okay. Anyway, but I was like, did he grow up on Earth? Yes. I saw something posted on a Vulture recap, and it was talking about like the relationship between the burn and the possibility of the music. And I'm like, what if this music is the music that like the frequency of the music is what caused the burn? And so it's ingrained in everyone's memory because it's this weird traumatic point. That could also be kind of interesting. I'm really into the music thing. I'm like excited about the possibilities here. But
2 episodes ago, was it 2 episodes? Man, 2 episodes ago, we had the episode where I hate how I'm talking right now. Hey, 2 episodes ago, we
Okay.
had this
And-
point of conflict between Saru and Burnham where she didn't tell him what she was going to do, and she and Book went and jumped into that other ship and like saved the day by breaking protocol or whatever, right? And he says this really great line of that trust is going to have to be an assumption from us between us from now on. Like it's
Right.
there's a frayed trust there, and they're just gonna have to assume rather like than implicitly knowing, I guess. And I thought it was really well phrased, really eloquent of Saru to kind of say that. And I was wondering how you guys feel about their relationship in this episode. I know we kind of already touched on it, but are they growing closer in their trust here, or are they still a little bit fractured and they're kind of squabbling over details?
Yeah, I like the conflict and relationship they have, but I think they're always going to have the same goal, which is to serve the Federation and Starfleet, and of course their ship, their family. They might go about it in different ways, but I think that battling it out in that conflict that we're probably going to see in every episode is going to make them both better people. I don't think there's going to be much of a power play.
Yeah, and I think they sort of tied it together nicely at the end of this episode when, Burnham is like, to me, the people are Starfleet and the Federation, where I think the institution of it is maybe something that is a little bit more important to Saru because of the way he was brought into the Federation. It was through these sort of rules and regulations of like, oh, he's now technologically more advanced than the rest of his people and he has this desire, so let's bring him in. And he had to sort of, I think it's also interesting because he is the first Kelpian, probably had to play by the rules way more than anyone else to get the respect that he deserved, right? And so I think they're coming from this in two different angles where Burnham has essentially had to relearn her humanity from being brought up on Vulcan and is now very attached to that side of her after her time away from the crew, versus Saru, who has had to use the rules and regulations to his advantage and his knowledge base in order to get to the point where he is today. So I agree with you, Mike. I think they're going to be at odds, but always sort of this complementary pairing the whole time.
We have time, I think, for one more comment. Elizabeth Acosta says, the soundtrack this season is really great. I hadn't really noticed it in previous seasons as more than just the background, but it's really in the forefront. Do y'all feel it? Sometimes I think it's really good. I think it can be a little overbearing like it was in a few scenes last episode, but here it really helped drive the emotion.
Yeah, I think it's also perhaps purposeful that they're really tying in some more musical elements to the show if music is in fact going to be playing a big part in the plot as well. I think that's them being very sneaky but very clever.
Making Jeff Russo earn his money.
Clever.
Yeah, well, they all worked so hard. They recorded a full freaking orchestra remotely, individually, and then layered it like in post. So just like, again, bow downs to post-production teams. You've all gone above and beyond.
Indeed.
It's just stitching 31 tracks together.
It's
Mariah.
more
That's
than
no
31
biggie.
tracks.
32.
It's probably at least a 250 track Pro Tools session. I would guesstimate.
No,
least.
thank you. All right. Anything else to say about this episode?
I mean, I think it got us from point A to point B of some pieces that we needed to know. Is it my favorite we've had so far? No, I think last week was going to be pretty hard to top for me in a couple of ways, but I think next week looks really cool with this kind of collective of captains. And then it also looks like maybe we get a Burnham Georgiou go rogue mission, which I'm also excited about.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the revelation of what Starfleet is, it's interesting. It could have been a jaw-dropping moment, but that might not fit the overall beats of what they need for the season. So I'm along for the ride, though, obviously.
Yeah.
We're doing this podcast, obviously. I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more of the universe being built. All right. Thank you so much for joining the pod this week. Remember, you can find us live on YouTube and all the other places every Thursday, 9 p.m. Central, Talking Trek. Mariah,
Yes.
your turn.
Excellent. So one more
Your
time,
turn.
please make sure you have subscribed to the pod. If you're here on YouTube or on Twitch, you can subscribe to our channels as well. And on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you know when we're about to go live. It'll let you know. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts specifically. That helps other people find the show. So we really appreciate those there. And shouts to everyone who's already done that. You can find links to everywhere you can find this podcast at StarTrekPod.co.
Patreon.com/Star Trek Pod. If you're already there, you know. And if you have any ideas for particular content you're wanting us to cover, we love seeing that and tackling new ideas for y'all.
Perhaps
Hit
some
us
more
up.
Mirrorverse episodes we should talk about.
Oh, we can just talk about things related to the theme Mirror, like Justin Timberlake's song Mirror.
Everyone,
I'm
please
good.
remember
I'm
to
good.
follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Star Trek Pod. Tweet about this pod episode. Shout out to Karen, who helps run our Twitter, and James Worm, who helps run our Insta. What are you saying about mirrors, Grant?
It's like
Mirror,
in my
mirror.
mirror.
Mariah, where can we find you online?
You can find me on all social platforms at Mariah Gossett. That's Mariah with a Y and a Gossett with 2 S's and 2 T's.
Grant Davis.
Baron Von Grant.
Follow me on Insta and Twitter at Mike Moody Garcia. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Live long and prosper.
Bye.